Welcome back, everyone, for part 2 of our series on overcoming shame. We have been talking about shame resilience. If you have not listened to the very first podcast on this series, you need to go check that out. We talked about recognizing shame, understanding our triggers, and practicing critical awareness. So I'm not going to bore you with recapping any of that right now, because that is not the goal. We want to cover the other 2 elements of shame resilience as identified by researcher Brene Brown, and that is reaching out and telling our story. That's number 3. And number 4 is speaking shame. And so I'm excited because I got Dr. Tracy back in the house with us today to just blow our minds. No pressure, no pressure. Let the Lord use you. Let the Lord use you, girl. No. But it's going to be good. It's going to be good. So just to kick us off today, we want to talk about reaching out and telling our story. And so, this is a strategy of connection when it comes to shame resilience. And so I'm going to read a little piece on page 127 of her book and then just have some conversation with you, Tracy. Is that okay?
Okay. Absolutely.
So Brene goes to say in her book, regardless of who we are, how we were raised, or what we believe, all of us fight hidden, silent battles against not being good enough, not having enough, and not belonging enough. But when we find the courage to share our experiences and the compassion to hear others tell their stories, we force shame out of hiding and we end the silence. So, Dr. Tracy, we are talking about reaching out and telling our story. And I believe this reaching out concept is twofold.
Yes.
Right? That it can have 2 meanings. And so we talked a little bit before, y'all. You weren't there, but we talked about really what that means from 2 different perspectives. And so I just want you to elaborate that on a little bit about us reaching out when we are in shame, and then reaching out to others when we recognize when they're in shame. So just want to hear your thoughts on that.
Okay. Well, I think Brene uses the terms insulating and separating, correct? And we spent time beforehand going, what's the difference between the 2? And trying to tease them apart. And I think as we talked about it and discussed it, and I kind of put my spin on it and she put her spin on it, we kind of came up to kind of this place of when we're reaching out to people, if we get to this point where I know I'm feeling shame, but I've got this us versus them kind of mindset, right? Like maybe it's, I can't, talk to the kids in the rich neighborhood, or, I can't talk to my coworker who doesn't, make as much money. They're not going to understand. And we kind of put these walls up and these separations up, thinking of where people are or their statuses or their titles, and forgetting that they're just people. And everybody has struggles. And, and sometimes I do and say things that are hurtful to people without even realizing it, because I'm operating from a place of this is what I know. And I may be speaking in ignorance. And, same goes for other people. I was, using the example, I don't know if you guys have had this experience where you and your girlfriend are in a car and you're just singing along and you're having a good time and you're just singing that song, and then suddenly it's just you and your girlfriend's looking at you and she's like, those are not the words of the song. Oh, yeah, they are. They are totally. I've been singing the song for years and now. And she pulls up Google and sure enough, you've been singing some words that are not the words. And it's that place of like, oh my. And you just know that what you know is the truth. And then it's suddenly not. Right. And that place is like, oh, wait, okay, this could be happening in other ways. I could be thinking, I just know. And that's not true. And I think when we see that these ideas and these expectations that we have and these beliefs that we have, and we're expecting them from other people, that we are just as capable of making others feel uncomfortable as they are for us. I think it makes it easier. It levels the playing field. Right. And we can all just be real with each other. It's not about money. It's not about skin tone. It's not about hair texture. It's not about any of that stuff. It's just for people. Right. And that's a hard place to get to. Make it sound like it's so easy.
Well, I tell you, when we talk about this whole idea of reaching out, right? Reaching out can be me reaching out to you and helping you, right? In the book, she talks about we don't reach out to others. When we don't reach out to others, we allow them to sit alone in their shame. And that feeds the shame and that secrecy and silence that shame actually craves. And so she talked about it. We don't reach out to fix or save people, because then you're looking at some innate, maybe codependency kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, we're not trying to do that.
You need me to fix you, to save you.
I think it's probably more about validating, right?
Absolutely. Validating
their experience.
And sharing the whole idea. I wrote down, that it's really reaching out is really saying you're not alone, and me too.
Yeah.
Right? And that's that empathy. And it's really a strategy of connection, because connection is what promotes shame resilience, right? I put it in my own words, and maybe you will agree, that this reaching out and telling our stories really just, as I was reflecting on that, I was like, okay, this is talking about my ability to recognize when others are in shame, and encouraging them to share their shame stories by being vulnerable, so that they can receive the empathy and the support that they need to feel connected, and not alone. And I also believe that reaching out is the ability to sit in shame with others, hear their stories, and that really requires us to have courage and compassion, right? Because I can see if you're in shame and then be like, you know what? It's so uncomfortable that I really don't want to hear anymore.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, because when we say the word shame, people are even afraid of that, because
I have a lot of clients, I'll say, oh, this sounds like you're experiencing shame. And they're like, no, this isn't shame. No, I feel guilt. I feel guilty, but I don't feel shame. Okay. Wow. And then as you talk a little bit more, then the tears start coming, and they're like, I do feel shame, because it's owning that I feel broken. Yeah. I feel broken. And none of us want to feel broken. No. Right? Like, guilt I can fix.
Right.
Shame.
It's me.
That's me. Like, I'm flawed. I'm beyond repair.
Yep.
And that is a lie.
It is.
By the way.
And it's absolutely a lie.
It's a lie.
And I think this reaching out reinforces a basic human need for connection. Yes. Right? Because that's one of our basic human needs for survival.
Yes.
And well-being. So if I don't feel like I can reach out to you and you're not safe, or that there's this whole negative, you know what it kind of reminds me of? When I was thinking about it, remember that old song, I Need You to Survive? Yeah. I need you, you need me, I need you to survive. And it's just like, I used to not like that song. It just sounded so, I'll just be honest, it just sounded so weird, It is his will that every need be supplied. And it's just kind of like, you are important to me, and I need you to survive. But as that song popped into my mind as I was looking at this, and I just thought, do we in America really believe that we need each other to survive? That's not the Western culture way.
No,
I don't need to reach out and ask for your help. I got this.
I hear it every day from clients. I got this. I like coming here means that I'm weak or brave. No, sorry, that I'm weak and I'm insecure and I have vulnerabilities and
Wait, so I think it starts with that, right? Do we really believe that we need other people to help us heal? And I would say yes.
Yes, we do. We were designed that way. I tell clients that I take a more faith-based approach. It's like, we are created in the Father's image, and understand our Father's image is threefold, right? Yeah. He himself is a relationship. Yes. Right? And so if we're created in that image, I don't know about you, but I take that to mean that if he's a relationship, then that's the expectation that he has for us, that we're in relationship. Yes. And he said it after he created Adam.
It's not good for man to be alone. And woman, right? Yeah. It's not good for humanity. Yes. For people to walk alone. Yes. Yeah. So I want to ask you, when it comes to reaching out, right? We need to know who we can reach out to. And sometimes, different people we can reach out to. So when you consider some of the issues that we may be facing, right? How would you encourage people to look into their network and get the support that they need? For example, just to give some more context, Brene mentions in her book some questions that you can ask when you consider who you're looking at in your network. So for example, who are the individuals and groups who form your connection network, and who reaches out to you for empathy and support? So if you were going to encourage a client, a sister, that, hey, listen, you got to reach out. What advice would you give them concerning the right people who they need to reach out to?
Yeah. Definitely you want to look at I have a pretty large social group. And so over time, you kind of learn like the friends you can talk about certain things with.
Right.
Right. You kind of know about how they react to stuff. Like some of my friends, I can do the ugly cry with. I can just be really just ugly and just raw.
Yep.
And they will sit there with me in it. And some of them, you can just tell by like the terror on their face.
Because not everyone can handle
they don't know what to do, right? And I think sometimes, because I tend to be the one in my friend group that kind of has it together, which is totally a joke. I don't have it together. But they think that I do.
Which of us do? Let's be real.
They think
we all
that
trying
I
to figure it out.
I got them all fooled.
Right.
And so when I'm falling apart, it's like, okay, if the captain of the ship is falling apart, oh my gosh, we're going down.
Right.
And so I think it's more about, that like, oh wait, you're the one that's supposed to have it all together. You don't have this figured out?
Right.
Oh no.
Right.
And so, and just recognizing that it's, and letting and releasing them from that. And I think it's, really looking at your circle and going, okay, when I hear them, talk about other people that have come to them and they're struggling, like, how do they talk about that? How do they, and how are they vulnerable with me? Are they telling me, things that they're struggling with? Is there reciprocity in that relationship? Are they gossiping about other people and with their struggles?
Right. Are they trustworthy people?
Are they trustworthy?
And are they people who will give you wisdom?
Yeah,
right?
I was about to say, like, and wisdom. And, and do they make wise decisions?
Yes.
And not just they know wise stuff, because there are people that know stuff, but then their life is a mess. Right.
This is true.
And so it's like, and now hear me say this, my life is not perfect. So
right.
But you can see movements in the wise direction.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm not saying you're looking for the perfect friend that never messes up, but when they do make those mistakes, they correct them in a wise way.
Yeah.
And so you are going to someone that is going to be trustworthy and that they are going to allow you to have your emotions and validate those emotions. And they are going to encourage you and be uplifting and they're going to give you wise counsel. I know that's a tall order. It's
but they're
order.
out there.
But they're out there. They're out there. I have them. And if you don't have them, well, then that's when, maybe looking into getting a counselor.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then working with the counselor and helping you kind of understand, your needs and your insecurities better. So then it is easier to identify those people. Because sometimes we're so anxious and insecure about ourselves, our anxiety and worry about who we are gets in the way of us identifying people.
That's true.
Because there might be people out there, but we're not seeing them because we're seeing them through our anxious mind. I don't know if that makes sense.
And I think sometimes we wait for those people to come to us,
right?
And think somehow in our distorted minds that they should know.
They should just know
where we're at. When the reality is, like Scripture says, you have not because you ask not. How am I going to know what your need is? That you need someone, right, to be in your corner to support you, right? And I think just to kind of rephrase what you were saying is that you need to know. Is this someone who's going to trivialize my feelings?
Right.
Am I going to feel worse? What do I see them doing to other people?
Right.
Right. As an indicator of that. Because if you are creating shame, you shame talk other people, then I know that you're not a safe person. But I think it's really important for us. I think sometimes when we're hurting and we're in pain, we're in shame, we expect things to fall into our, well, no one's reaching out to me. No one. Well, you know what? Sometimes we got to own that and ask for the help that we need. And so speaking of that, before I jump to that thought, I want to make sure that you covered and shared and elaborated on the type of people that you think that we need to.
I think so.
Okay.
I do. I think it's just, really looking around at your circle and really, being mindful of, how are they with other people and how do they talk about other people and how have they interacted with me? And how do they share their vulnerabilities?
Yes.
Because it's so much easier to talk to somebody if they're real with you.
Yeah.
And they can recognize themselves like, man, this is something I'm working on and I'm not really sure how to do it, but I know I'll figure it out. I don't know how to do it right now. It's so much easier to talk to that person.
Absolutely.
Because that they'll let you be real and be in that space too.
Yeah. And I think the most important thing we can do is, even be, because we talk about this whole twofold reaching out, right? Me reaching out to you when I see that you're in shame, and then me reaching out when I feel like I'm in shame. And so I think when we reach out from the aspect of, I see you're in shame and I want to reach out to you, is really, have I demonstrated that I'm a safe person?
Yeah.
Historically in my character, right? And really, am I willing to really empathize with you and feel what you're feeling and have the courage and the compassion to sit with you in that and identify to the point where I'm feeling so much of what you're feeling, right? That takes a
lot.
It does take a lot.
And it takes releasing this idea that I've got to fix the other person, that I've got to make it better. And I think we kind of live in this society where we're problem solvers and we got to fix it and we got to make it better and move on. And I can tell you as a psychologist, I get this from people, when I have bad days and I get frustrated or I start crying over something and people kind of look at me like, but you're a psychologist, you're supposed to have it together. I'm like, I'm a human being. I'm not a robot.
Absolutely.
And, and knowing that it's okay to have those feelings. We have days where we have seasons that things just don't go well.
Yeah.
And having people that will allow you to be human and not like hold you to the standard of, oh no, you've always got it. Cause that's just not real.
You should.
It's just not real. And I get it. I think sometimes they need that for themselves to feel more secure. It's like, but I can't be that for you. Like I need to be me. Like I can't be like I need to be me. And me right now is, I feel like my world is a hot mess and I need a gallon of ice cream.
Listen, I have been, and you know what? And what I love what you're saying too, is I think sometimes people have that misconception about people of faith. You're supposed to have it all together. You got Jesus. He's all you need. You got scriptures. You know the word. You've been raised in the church. You serve in the church. You serve on staff in the church. And there are these expectations that you are free. We are all part of the human experience. Even Jesus, when he hung on that cross, he said, Father, if it be your will, take this cup off of me, away from me. He's saying, man, this is hurting really bad. But nevertheless, so we see in that moment his humanity, the Son of God, perfect in every single way, who sinned not, still in his humanity said, this is real. This is heavy. And felt forsaken. Like, Father, why have you forsaken? Yes.
So he's been in it. So you can have the strongest faith.
Yes.
And it's
part of the human experience, right?
Yeah, it's a human experience.
Part of being a part of being born into a sinful world. Okay. So just to kind of close up that thought and move into the fourth element, which is speaking shame, just really want to say, reaching out is about you when recognizing when you're in shame. You can't reach out if you don't recognize when you're in it and you don't understand your triggers. Yeah. But even if you don't understand, still find those trustworthy people who are empathic, who are trustworthy, who are non-judgmental, who are willing to listen and sit with you with courage and compassion and walk alongside of you, not to fix you, but just to say, you know what? You're not alone, and me too. So that's reaching out. And even sharing our story. That's the other aspect of that, and that's that whole Me Too component, right? But you got to be careful with that. I will just say this.
Yeah.
Sometimes in our effort to support people, we start over-identifying with our own story, and then we end up making it about us.
Oh, yes.
Right? Yes. Over-identify. Like, me too. I remember this time. So it's just like, be careful when you see someone in shame and you're sitting with them and you share your story. You have to have discernment and wisdom to know how much to share in that moment, because you don't want to make it about you in that moment. You want them to know, I see you, I feel you, I've been there, me too, but don't make it about you. Okay, y'all get that? Check that. Okay. So the last thing I want to talk about in the remaining time that we have today for the next maybe 5 to 7 minutes is really talk about this fourth element, which is speaking shame. And what that is twofold. It is expressing how we feel and asking for what we need. Now, Brene talks about some very specific things. And again, we come back to this whole vulnerability component of, in order to acknowledge what we feel, that's not easy for a lot of us to say, I feel confused, I feel afraid. And so what advice, Dr. Tracy, or thoughts come to your mind? Or maybe there's some barriers to that, how do what are the barriers and how do we overcome expressing how we really feel, what's going on inside of us?
I think sometimes there's shame around our feelings. When we grow up in a home where
true. You better preach.
You're not allowed to feel certain emotions.
Yes.
Or like I said, like you can have a career where people say you're not allowed to have certain emotions.
Right.
And so you do kind of distance yourself, from what you're feeling. You think, oh, these are bad. But again, we're human beings. We all have emotions. They're okay, but it's what we do with them that matters, right? I mean, the whole gamut, even anger, where it's, oh, be angry. It's like, no, the Bible's very clear. Don't sin in your anger. It doesn't say don't be angry. It just says don't sin when you're angry. And so, I mean, I work with clients about this a lot. There are tons of free apps you can get for your phone. You can go to YouTube and just learn how to be mindful and meditate. And I always kind of joke with clients, like, if you want to sit cross-legged and say, that's great, but that's not the only way that you can meditate. The idea of like the mindfulness and the meditation is to become more aware of what's actually going on in your body and what's going on in your mind. Because if I don't know what I'm feeling, and recognize that sometimes my feelings can be wrong, because I can tell myself I feel broken, but I'm not broken. But recognize that sometimes those feelings are there because it speaks to a greater need. There's some need that I have that's not being met. And if I can't sit with that and own that, then I can't tell my friend, I'm really feeling unsafe right now. I need something to help me feel safe. I'm feeling really confused about what's going on in my life right now. I need to make something needs to change so I feel less confused. I don't know what that is, but if I can't own that feeling, I can't tell people, and then I can't start to take steps to get that need met. And so it's not just about the feeling. There's a need attached to that feeling. And if I don't have the feeling, if I don't understand it, if I won't sit with it, I can't tell people, I can't start acting, and I can't meet the need. And then I'm just going to be sitting in my distress and guilt and shame and eating ice cream and watching the numbers on the scale go up. And
living in desolation, you know.
And so that's not how it's meant to be. I mean, we have to feel those feelings. It's okay. So you're hearing this from me. This is like a verbal prescription from the doctor.
Okay, prescribe away.
You are allowed to feel what you feel and to label it and identify the need that is hooked to that feeling.
I remember reading something that said feelings are data and they're messages. You know, God created us with feelings, and feelings are not, now some people may disagree with this, they're not positive or negative, good or bad. They are just there. They're data, and they are telling us something about our thoughts, our perceptions, our attitudes, and our beliefs. And, you know, but here, you know, one of the barriers I think to acknowledging and expressing how we feel is us not even recognizing what we feel, right? So this is a part of emotional intelligence. So we are sometimes not in touch with really what is this feeling. Like for me, who's I think pretty aware of what I feel, sometimes I have to step back and say, what am I really feeling? And then what am I really thinking that could actually be causing that feeling or perpetuating that feeling? So I just want to encourage you all who are listening, you know, to really practice working on being emotionally self-aware. And
that's why I was saying, you know, like the mindfulness and the meditation, but also this is something I always talk with clients about too. You can have multiple feelings.
Absolutely.
And they can be conflicting.
Complex.
And I think a lot of times we'll be in a situation that we know is amazing, but there's a part of us that's not in alignment with that. Right. There's like this anxiety or this overwhelming, and it's like, what is that? It's like, I'm really happy right now. I have joy, but there's this other thing. And we start to feel bad about that and try and cover it up. Again, it's a symptom. Right. And we can have, I mean, I've had lots of times in my life when I've been happy, but also freaking out too. I'm really excited, but also really scared. So you don't have to choose. I always talk to my clients about like a garden. In a garden, you have the garden and you have weeds. You have both. And there are some plants, they need the weeds for the roots to take hold. And so if you go in there and you start yanking up the weeds, you're going to kill off your garden. You have to recognize them. You have to keep, you know, both balance. But sometimes we just think, no, I can only feel one thing. And it's like, no, we're complex.
Yes, we are. We really are.
And it's okay. And even with the meditation and the mindfulness, if you still don't get it, go to counseling. Go to counseling. And you're like, well, I can't afford counseling. Man, most communities have sliding scale. They have a community counseling. They have something, you know, shucks, you know, get online and get to a support group online or something. There's ways to start to become more emotionally aware. Because we need that.
That we do. Because really, we're not, like you said, it's connected to our need, right? If no one knows, they can't read our minds. They don't know what we're experiencing. Some of us are so good at shielding, covering, hiding, withdrawing, isolating, separating, all those things that we've already talked about, that we really need to just be open and be honest and be vulnerable and be authentic and be aware. Like, we need to know what we are experiencing. I like how she talked in a book about asking for what we need. And you touched on this already, but I think sometimes that, again, also requires emotional self-awareness. Because, okay, I'm feeling this. I need to communicate this. But then how can you help me? How can I help you if I don't know what your need is? And so we have to really think about, you can help me, Dr. Tracy, and this is what I need from you. I need you to be supportive. I need you to be a listener. I need you to be comfortable with what I'm about to share with you. Or I need you to be sensitive. I need you to be honest. And I know that sometimes there are barriers to us expressing what we need. And how would you encourage someone who maybe their family of origin, their culture, what they've learned says,
you don't talk about it?
Yeah, you don't say what you get the need met yourself. You know, that you really don't need this idea that you don't need anybody else to help you pull yourself up from your own bootstraps, you know, or whatever. So what do you say to that person who's really struggling with, okay, you know what? Yeah, Rodica and Dr. Tracy, I hear what you're saying. I understand my triggers. I know when I'm in shame. I know what I'm feeling. I can articulate that, but I'm really having a hard time asking for what I need. What do I do?
Well, what I'm going to say, and I'm saying this out of love, but when my clients come in and they have this struggle, and I'll just tell them, I'll just be raw with them and say, how you've been doing it? How's that working out for you? Mm-hmm. How's it working out for you? Mm-hmm. It's not working out, right? And so it's time to change things up. It's time to change things up. You know, the definition of insanity is continue to do the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different outcome. It ain't gonna happen. And if you want it better, then you're gonna have to find somebody that's gonna help you get it better. Yeah. Which means you're gonna have to open your mouth and go tell someone that you're needing. I don't know what it is. You can say, I don't know what it is I'm needing. It's like, but I can't do that. My family says I can't do that. I can't do that. You know, and we were talking beforehand about, you know, sometimes our families, they have these rules. Not sometimes. Every family has rules, spoken and unspoken. And we grow up with these rules without even realizing we're being kind of led by them and we're seeing our world through them. And at a certain time, you have to sit back and go, how is that rule impacting my life? Is it keeping me from achieving things, from, you know, feeling fulfilled and from growing and really feeling loved and purposeful? And if that's the case, that is not a healthy rule. It is a toxic rule. We are designed to flourish and thrive. And at a certain point, it doesn't mean you have to stop talking to your family. Yeah. Doesn't mean you have to stop talking to people, but you have to say, okay, I'm going to try and create a different rule that will allow me to be healthier. That's good. And so I'm going to take a step, and it can be a small step. It can be looking online for something. It can be, like I said, it can be connecting to people through the internet, and then like gradually moving towards, you know, talking to a person face to face, but finding some way to kind of shift that rule and identify, this isn't healthy for me. I need to start making a shift here.
And I know that as people are listening to you, they're like, okay, Dr. Tracy, I did that, you know what I'm saying? But when I reached out, when I shared what I felt, when I asked for what I needed, man, I got burnt. I felt more shame. I got rejected. I felt judged. I felt criticized. I felt condemned. What do you say to that person?
Well, I'm sad that you have that experience. And I've had that experience before. And oftentimes people do things without even realize what they're doing and say, okay, that was my experience with this person. You know, kind of like how we kind of before we're talking about, you know, things to look for if the person's safe or not. Yes. You know, go back to the drawing board. Were all those things identified in that person? And maybe there was something that wasn't quite on that checklist, and I went ahead anyway. And it's like, okay, let me make sure I stick closer to that checklist of who's trustworthy. That's good. And do it again, because not everybody's bad. Not everybody's going to make you feel horrible and shameful, and the devil wants you to believe that. That's right. Right? Like, if he can isolate you, then he can destroy you.
Keep you quiet.
And saying, okay, not everybody is like this, and there's somebody out there that I know will understand this experience. Yeah.
And I think we've all maybe have chosen to be vulnerable and open and had some of those experiences. I'm sure a lot of you listeners could say, yep, I've done that and I've been hurt. And I just want to encourage you, Dr. Tracy and I were talking, I think before we started recording, we were saying, you know what, the reality is we need to take on the attitude and the mind and a posture of Christ, who is able to say, when I am in shame, when I've been hurt, when I've been rejected and humiliated and despised and judged, to be able to say, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And I'm not saying that's easy, but not everyone is going to hit the mark. And I think we have to understand that everyone is somewhere developmentally as well. And they may not be ready to hear that. And Brene talks about recognizing shame talk. When we see this in other people, and that can be an indicator, how we talked earlier about which people should you reach out to. Recognize it when you hear people saying things like, you're so sensitive, I didn't realize you were so fragile, you're so defensive, I need to watch what I say around you. It's all in your head. That is shame language. That does not create a safe place. And so you can add those to your tool belt too, when you consider who you need to reach out to. So
I think I don't know if we said this yet, but something we talked about maybe before, we have said it, but oftentimes when you leave those conversations where you're trying to get support and you leave feeling like you were shamed in that effort, what you're facing is that person's shame.
Yes.
And they have an insecurity, they have shame in that area, and it triggers their stuff. And instead of owning it in the moment,
right.
they are like, this is all you. This is, and that happens so much when we encounter people that are shaming us. It's their area of insecurity.
Yeah.
And they have created their own shame system around it.
Right.
And it gets dumped. And people don't know sometimes. They really don't know.
They're not aware. That's why it's so important. We're talking about awareness.
Yeah.
They don't
know.
Which brings me to, as we wrap up this episode is really, when it comes to shame resilience, obviously knowing that God is the ultimate source of our healing. He has died to wash away all of our shame. And then he's also created us for connection and community, and to receive empathy and give empathy. And so I just want to say, number one, recognize when you're in shame, understand what your triggers are. Practice critical awareness. Know why you're feeling that way. Know what identities, what expectations others have of you and what your expectations are. And learn how to process them. Thirdly, learn how to reach out, share your story, and then also not just reach out for you when you're in shame, but reach out to others when you see that they're in shame and provide that support and encouragement and empathy that they need, and be courageous and sit with them in that. And lastly, speaking shame. And that's really being able to, what am I about to say here? Oh my gosh. Oh, speaking shame. Let me go back. And then the last one is speaking shame. And that's really asking for what you need and expressing how you feel. And so again, requires emotional intelligence for you to have the language, for you to have vulnerability and openness to be able to say, this is what I'm feeling and this is what I need from you. And I tell you what, if you can practice these 4 things, you will become more shame resilient. It's not about how can I avoid shame?
Yeah, it's going to happen.
It's going to happen. And most 9 times out of 10, right? We want to give people the benefit of the doubt unintentionally.
Yes.
The question is, what am I going to do when I'm in shame? And so I hope this framework encouraged you. I hope that you will share this knowledge with someone else, right? Don't just keep it to yourself. When you get something good and it's going to help you, be sure to share it with others around you. And so with that, I'm going to end and turn it over to Dr. Tracy if she has any last closing thoughts. If you were going to say, Dr. Tracy, one big idea, if they did not catch anything out of either one of these episodes, what would you say to them about becoming more shame resilient?
Okay. Get out your paper and pencil. This is going to be a serious, deep thought. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
You are not alone.
That's good. And so, friends, that's the word for today. You are not alone. God sees you. God knows. Yes. He's with you. He promised to never leave you or forsake you. And you got some sisters over here, right? Yes. You got some sisters that are around you that want you to know you're not alone. But you got to get that courage. Yes. Ask the Lord to help you to speak up and reach out and get the help that you need. And trust that the Lord is going to send those people into your life who's going to walk with you on your journey to healing and freedom. So If this message encouraged you, if it blessed you, if it gave you some tools for your tool belt, I would love to hear from you. Please send me a message, drop me an email. Let me know if you got any questions for Dr. Tracy. She is here as a servant to help you, to support you. We are both here committed to your health, to your well-being, and to your success and your relationships and walk with the Lord. And so we would love to hear from you. Drop me a line. Let me know what you think. And listen, y'all, share this episode, okay? Let's get some people free because who the sun sets free
is free indeed.
It's free indeed. Take care, y'all. Peace out and talk to you next time.